I sat in front of the nursing home with my phone pressed against my ear, the cold plastic heavy in my trembling hand. My voice cracked as I asked, Con din tham mẹ không? Will you come visit me? For a moment, I thought I heard breathing on the other end, but then there was nothing. Only silence. Not even the hollow beep of a call dropping. Just the sharp, endless pause that told me more than words ever could. My children didn't want to answer me. I'm 70 years old now, though in my heart I still feel like the woman who once sang lullabies to those same children until they fell asleep. My name is Margaret, but to them I used to be simply Mom. I never thought a word so small could carry such weight, or break so easily. Yet here I was, alone on a cracked wooden bench in front of the place they left me, holding onto a phone that only seemed to remind me of how distant they had become. The nursing home loomed behind me, all bright white walls and carefully trimmed hedges, pretending to be cheerful. It smelled faintly of bleach and overcooked vegetables, even from outside. The staff called it a residence for elders, but to me it felt like a waiting room for the forgotten. I hadn't wanted to come here. God knows I had fought against it. But after my husband died and the house became too big for me to manage, my children convinced me, no, pushed me, that this was best. They told me I would have company, care, and safety. And maybe in some ways that was true. But what they didn't say, and what I hadn't wanted to admit, was that they were putting me away. Out of sight. Out of mind. I remember the day they dropped me off. The sky was bright, too bright, a cool kind of sunny. My daughter Anna smiled and said, Mom, you'll love it here. It's for the best. My son Daniel kept looking at his watch, impatient, as though I were a task to be completed between his meetings. They hugged me quickly, like someone patting down a suitcase before closing it, and then they left. I stood in the lobby, my suitcase by my feet, watching their car pull away. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've tried to adjust. I've joined the bingo nights, even though I hate bingo. I've sat through the movie marathons where the sound is always too loud and the endings too predictable. I've listened to the other residents talk about their grandchildren as if the little ones still ran into their arms every weekend. I nodded, smiled, and pretended that maybe one day mine would too. But my weekends passed in silence, my phone sitting stubbornly still on the nightstand. I told myself they were busy. Of course they were. Anna had her career, Daniel had his family, and my youngest, Emily, lived in another state. I forgave their absences, made excuses for their silence. I convinced myself that when the holidays came, they would remember, that when my birthday came, they would call, that when the first snow fell, they would drive to see me. But none of that happened. What did happen was this. I started hearing whispers. From the nurses, from the neighbors, from people who thought I was too old, too deaf, too fragile to understand. Whispers about my children, about money, about betrayal. And slowly the pieces began to fall into place like a puzzle I never wanted to see completed. You see, before my husband died, we had built a life together. 45 years of work, sacrifice, and love. He was a factory man, hard-handed and strong, and I worked part-time jobs while raising the children. We were never rich, but we saved. Every penny. We skipped vacations, we patched up the roof ourselves, we drove our cars until they coughed their last. And all the while, we told ourselves, it's for the children, so they'll have a better life. When he died, it was sudden. A heart attack on a warm spring morning. I was devastated. But I found comfort in knowing that we had prepared. There was life insurance, there were savings, there was the house fully paid off. Enough to keep me comfortable, enough to leave a legacy. That's what I thought. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that my children were already circling like vultures, whispering to each other when I wasn't looking. The first hint came from Mrs. Green, a sharp-tongued neighbor who never missed a thing. She visited me once, not long before I moved here, and said, "Margaret, dear, I heard your children were talking to a realtor about your house. Are you selling?" I blinked at her, confused. Selling? No, I wasn't selling. But when I asked Anna about it, she waved me off. Mom, she probably misunderstood. Don't worry about it. But worry I did. Because soon after, Daniel started insisting I couldn't live alone. He said it was dangerous, that I might fall, that I might forget to turn off the stove. His wife chimed in too, all sugar and pity. "We just want what's best for you." I wanted to believe them, I really did. But every time I looked at them, I saw their eyes flicker when they talked about my house. My house, the one I had scrubbed and painted and loved for 40 years. When they finally convinced me to move into the nursing home, they told me it was temporary. "Just until we figure things out," Anna said. "You'll have more company here," Daniel added. I nodded, too tired to fight. But deep down, a part of me knew they wanted me out, and I would soon learn why. One afternoon, about a month after I arrived here, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of a document. My will. Or rather, what I thought was my will. Except the signatures didn't look right, and the numbers were different. The bulk of my estate, the house, the savings, even my jewelry, everything was marked for Anna and Daniel. Emily's name wasn't even there. And mine? The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but it wasn't. I never signed it. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the paper. I felt my heart race, my chest tighten. Betrayal is a heavy word, but it's the only one that fits. My own children had forged my will. They wanted me out of the house, out of the way, so they could carve up what my husband and I had worked for. I didn't know what to do. Who could I trust? If I went to the police, would they believe me? Would anyone? I was an old woman in a nursing home, claiming her own children had stolen from her. It sounded like the kind of sad story people nod at and then forget. So I waited. I watched. I listened. And the more I listened, the more I realized the truth was even darker than I imagined. Because Emily, the daughter who lived far away, the one who called less often, wasn't part of it. In fact, she had been cut out, deliberately. Why? That was the question that haunted me. Until one evening when a nurse who had grown fond of me whispered the answer. She had overheard Anna and Daniel talking in the parking lot. Emily wasn't just being ignored. She was being punished. For what? For knowing the secret they didn't want revealed. That night, I lay awake in my narrow nursing home bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What secret? What could be so terrible that my own children would betray their sister? Betray me? Betray the very blood that bound us together? Because here's the thing about mothers. We forgive too much. We excuse too much. We love beyond reason. But when you break us, when you truly shatter that bond, we can become something else entirely. Something you should fear. And my children, they were about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. The silence of the nursing home at night was unlike anything I had ever known. In my own house, nights were alive with the creaks of wood settling, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. Here, the silence was sterile, punctuated only by the distant buzz of fluorescent lights and the shuffle of nurses' shoes down the hallway. I lay awake, my heart pounding, replaying that whispered warning. Emily knew the secret. The next morning I called her, my youngest, my quiet child, the one who used to hide behind my legs at family gatherings. She answered on a third ring, her voice cautious. "Mom? Is everything okay?" I wanted to say yes, to protect her from the storm brewing, but I couldn't, not anymore. "Emily?" I whispered, glancing at the door to make sure no one was listening. "What is it that Anna and Daniel don't want me to know?" There was silence. A different kind of silence than the one I'd heard from the others. This one was heavy, full of pain. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "Mom, it's not my place. You should ask them." And then she told me. Her voice broke as she explained that years ago, after my husband's death, Anna and Daniel had uncovered something. A truth about money, about the past, about me. But instead of coming to me, they used it as a weapon. They held it over Emily's head, threatening to ruin her if she spoke of it. That was why she had grown so distant, why she stopped visiting. She wasn't cold, she was scared. "What truth?" I demanded. My hands trembled so badly the phone nearly slipped. She hesitated, then said, "Mom, it's about Dad, about what he left behind, and about you." My blood ran cold. "What about me?" But before she could explain further, her voice faltered. "I can't. Not like this. They'll find out I told you. I'll come visit soon, okay? I'll explain everything in person." The line went dead. I sat there, gripping the phone, my heart racing. What could it be? What could possibly be so terrible, so damning, that my own children would use it as a knife to cut me out of my own life? For days, I carried that question like a stone in my chest. I watched Anna and Daniel when they came to visit, which wasn't often, but often enough to remind me they still controlled the strings. They never stayed long. They brought flowers or cheap chocolates, smiling for the nurses, pretending to be dutiful children. But when no one else was looking, their eyes were cold, calculating. They never mentioned the house, or the money, or the will. But I knew. And they knew I knew. And then came the day of the meeting. A letter arrived, formal and embossed, from a lawyer's office. It was an invitation, or perhaps a command, to attend a family consultation regarding my estate. My estate. As if I were already dead. My stomach churned as I read the words. The meeting would take place at the lawyer's downtown office. Anna and Daniel were listed as attendees. Emily's name was nowhere on the page. When I showed the letter to the head nurse, she frowned. "Do you want me to accompany you?" she asked gently. I shook my head. Number. This was something I needed to face alone. The day of the meeting, I dressed carefully. Not in the soft cardigans I wore around the nursing home, but in the navy blue dress my husband had always loved, the one that made me feel strong. I pinned my hair back, applied a touch of lipstick, and slipped the letter into my worn leather briefcase. If they thought I would come meek and broken, they were wrong. The lawyer's office was cold. All glass walls and steel accents, a place that smelled of polished wood and power. Anna and Daniel were already there, sitting side by side at the long mahogany table. They looked up as I entered. Anna smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Daniel didn't smile at all. "Mom," Anna said smoothly, as if nothing were wrong. "I'm so glad you came." I sat down opposite them, my briefcase on my lap like armor. "What is this about?" I asked, my voice steady. The lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, this is simply to review your estate plans. Your children have some concerns." Concerns. The word tasted bitter. I turned to Anna and Daniel. "Concerns about what?" Daniel leaned forward, his jaw tight. "About your ability to make decisions, Mom. You're 70 now, living in a nursing home. We just want to make sure everything is handled properly." Properly? I spat the word back at him. Or profitably. Anna's eyes flickered, but her smile stayed fixed. "Mom, don't be dramatic. We just want to ensure your wishes are respected." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the photocopy of the forged will. I slapped it down on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "Is this what you mean by respecting my wishes?" The lawyer blinked, startled. Anna's face went pale. Daniel swore under his breath. "You forged my signature," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "You tried to erase your sister." "You tried to erase me." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Anna spoke, her voice low and sharp. "Mom, you don't understand. You're not thinking clearly." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I snapped. I understand that the children I raised, the ones I sacrificed everything for, would rather see me dead than let go of their greed. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. Don't you dare, Mom! Don't you dare make us the villains. You're the one who kept secrets. You're the one who lied. My heart stuttered. What are you talking about? He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Ask Emily. She knows. She's always known. The lawyer tried to intervene, but I barely heard him. My world had narrowed to the pounding of my heart, the shaking of my hands. Secrets, lies, my husband, me. I pushed back my chair and stood, my legs trembling but firm. This meeting is over, I said. I grabbed the forged will, shoved it into my briefcase, and walked out. I didn't look back. That night, I waited for Emily to call. She didn't. Instead, a letter arrived 2 days later, written in her careful, looping handwriting. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. She told me everything. When my husband died, he left more than just savings and a house. He left a second account, a hidden one, money I had never known about. It wasn't small either. It was nearly $500,000. Money he had kept secret from me. Money that Anna and Daniel discovered after his death. But that wasn't all. Along with the money, there was a letter, a confession. My husband had fathered another child, not with me, with someone else, decades ago, before Emily was born. The money was meant for that child, to make up for the years he had missed. Anna and Daniel had found the letter and the account. They had hidden it from me. And when Emily discovered the truth, because the child in question had reached out to her, they threatened her into silence. That was the secret. That was the weapon. I sat in my nursing home room, the letter trembling in my hands, my heart breaking all over again. My husband, the man I had trusted with my life, had betrayed me. And my children, the ones I had given everything for, had twisted that betrayal into their own weapon. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something to shatter the silence that surrounded me. Instead, I sat in my chair, rocking slowly, tears streaming down my face. But through the pain, through the rage, a new resolve began to grow. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I was powerless, but they had underestimated me. I might be old, I might be frail, but I was not finished. If they wanted war, then war they would have. The day after I read Emily's letter, I woke with a fire inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Betrayal has a way of either breaking you or sharpening you, and I refused to let it break me. Not after everything I had already endured. My husband's infidelity, the hidden child, the money meant for someone else, and the children I had raised turning into my enemies. It was almost too much to bear. But somewhere in that storm of grief and anger, a voice inside me whispered, "No more silence. No more weakness." I spent the morning sitting by the window in my room at the nursing home, staring out at the garden where volunteers had planted roses. The petals were bright, vibrant, defiant against the autumn wind. I thought of how many times I had bent myself into shapes for others, how many times I had given without asking anything back. And this was the return. Silence on the phone, lies in my name, greed in their eyes. I clenched my fists and swore I would not go quietly into their trap. First, I needed proof. The forged will was a start, but it wasn't enough. I needed documents, bank statements, letters. I needed to show the world that my children were thieves, not caretakers. That night, after dinner, I asked one of the younger nurses, Sweet Maria, who had always brought me an extra cookie, to help me use the computer in the staff lounge. I told her it was just for emails. She smiled, not asking questions. I typed slowly, my hands trembling over the keyboard, but I managed to log into the one account I still controlled, an old shared email between me and my husband. And there it was. Buried under years of junk and forgotten memos, a message from the bank dated months before his death about the hidden account. Attached was a scanned copy of his confession letter. He had sent it to himself, probably to keep a record. My stomach twisted as I opened it, the words staring back at me like a ghost. If Margaret ever finds this, I am sorry. There was another woman long ago, a child born from my mistake. I cannot face her with the truth, so I leave this account in hopes that it will make some difference. My eyes blurred with tears. My husband had chosen cowardice. Instead of trusting me, he had buried his shame in secrecy. And Anna and Daniel, my own flesh and blood, had chosen greed over honesty. I printed everything: the email, the letter, the account details. I folded the papers neatly and slipped them into my briefcase, alongside the forged will. With each page, I felt myself becoming less of the fragile old woman they thought I was, and more of the mother who had once carried 3 children on her hips, who had scrubbed floors and fought bills and survived heartbreak. The next step was Emily. She had been the only one brave enough to tell me the truth. I called her that night, my voice firm. "Emily, we're going to fix this. You and me." She cried softly on the other end. "Mom, they'll destroy us if we try." "No," I said, my voice steady. "They'll destroy themselves." We agreed to meet the following week at a cafe near her apartment. It was the first time I had been outside the nursing home in months for something that wasn't doctor's orders. Maria helped me with the bus route, even walked me to the stop, squeezing my hand like a granddaughter. When I saw Emily waiting for me at the cafe, my heart ached. She looked older than I remembered, her eyes tired, her shoulders weighed down by secrets too heavy for one soul to carry. She hugged me tightly, as if afraid I might vanish. We sat in a quiet corner, sipping coffee that tasted bitter but warm. She told me everything again, in detail this time, about the child. His name was Michael, now a grown man in his 40s, about how he had reached out after my husband's death, hoping for acknowledgement, maybe even a connection, about how Anna and Daniel had intercepted, threatening him, threatening Emily, to keep it all buried. "They said if I ever told you, they'd cut me off," Emily whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They said you'd hate me for keeping it from you." I took her hands in mine. "Oh, my sweet girl. I could never hate you. You're the only one who still remembers I'm a mother, not just a bank account." We held each other for a long time. Then I showed her the papers, the forged will, the email, the confession letter. Her eyes widened. "Mom, this is everything. This proves what they've done." "Yes," I said, "and now we use it." But revenge is never simple. It requires patience, timing, and the willingness to see through the ugliness of others. I had to be careful. Anna and Daniel were clever, ruthless even. They thought I was too old to fight back. That would be their mistake. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A month later, the nursing home hosted a family night. Residents could invite their children and grandchildren for dinner and music. I hadn't planned on going, but when Anna called, her voice dripping with false sweetness, saying, "We'll come, Mom. It'll be good for you," I realized fate had handed me a stage. That night, the dining hall was decorated with paper lanterns and cheap flowers. Residents beamed as their families arrived, laughter filling the room. I sat at my table, my briefcase at my feet, waiting. When Anna and Daniel walked in, dressed impeccably as always, they looked like the perfect children. They kissed my cheeks, posed for photos with me, played the part of loving offspring. But I knew better. Halfway through the evening, when the microphone was passed around for families to share stories, I stood up. My legs trembled, but my voice was strong. "I want to say something," I announced. The room quieted. Anna and Daniel glanced at each other, unease flickering in their eyes. I looked around at the crowd. Other mothers, fathers, grandparents, children. All my life, I believed in sacrifice. I believed that if you gave everything for your children, they would love you, protect you. But sometimes sacrifice becomes betrayal. Sometimes the ones you love the most are the ones who destroy you. Gasps filled the room. Anna reached for my arm, hissing, "Mom, "Sit down." But I shook her off. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the documents, holding them high. These are the truths my children tried to bury. A forged will, a hidden fortune, a confession of betrayal from their father. They thought they could silence me. They thought I was too old, too weak. But I am still their mother, and I will not let them erase me. The room erupted. Murmurs spread. Eyes turned to Anna and Daniel, who sat frozen, pale as ghosts. I laid the papers on the table for everyone to see. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't strangers who tried to steal from me. It wasn't outsiders who forged my name. It was my own children. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. The truth was out. The director of the nursing home approached, concerned, but I handed him the papers calmly. Make copies. Everyone here should know what kind of people they are. Anna stood, her voice sharp as glass. She's lying. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But the damage was done. Whispers turned into accusations. Other residents glared at them. Even the staff looked disgusted. Daniel tried to grab the papers, but the director held them firm. We'll let the authorities decide, he said. Anna turned on me, her mask finally slipping. You'll regret this, Mom. You'll regret ever crossing us. I met her gaze, unflinching. No, Anna. The only regret I have is raising children who became strangers. That night, they stormed out, leaving me alone at the table. But I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Other residents came to me, squeezing my hand, whispering words of support. Maria hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. When I returned to my room, I sat on my bed, exhausted, but alive. The war was far from over. There would be lawyers, investigations, battles yet to come. But I had drawn the first blood. I had taken back my voice. And I knew one thing with certainty. Anna and Daniel had underestimated me. They had forgotten that a mother's strength doesn't die with age. If anything, it hardens, sharpens, becomes unbreakable. They wanted to erase me. Instead, I would expose them. The morning after family night, the air in the nursing home felt different. Nurses smiled at me with a new kind of respect. Residents nodded as I passed, and even the director stopped by my table at breakfast to say quietly, "We'll help you however we can, Margaret." I wasn't just another old woman in a quiet corner anymore. I had become a storm, and everyone had seen it. But Anna and Daniel weren't going to disappear without a fight. Within a week, I received notice from their lawyer, claiming I was mentally unfit to handle my own affairs. They wanted control, legal guardianship over me. Reading those words, I felt a shiver of rage so deep it seemed to light every nerve in my body on fire. My own children were trying to strip me of my very autonomy, to silence me completely. I refused to let them. Emily stood by me, fierce and unwavering. She came to visit every day now, sitting in my room with folders of documents, witness statements, and timelines. Together, we built our case. The forged will, the confession letter from my husband, the hidden account, the threats made against Emily, even the testimony of Maria, who had overheard Anna and Daniel arguing in the parking lot one night. Piece by piece, we gathered the truth like shattered glass, sharp and undeniable. When the day of the hearing arrived, I dressed in the same navy blue dress I had worn to the lawyer's office, the one that made me feel like a warrior. Emily wheeled me into the courtroom, but I stood when the judge entered, my back straight despite the tremor in my legs. Anna and Daniel sat across from me, their expensive suits crisp, their expressions polished masks of concern. To anyone who didn't know better, they looked like dutiful children worried about their aging mother. But I knew the truth, and now, so would everyone else. The judge listened patiently as their lawyer painted a picture of me as confused, unstable, incapable of managing my own affairs. He spoke of episodes of forgetfulness, of irrational decisions, of declining health. Anna even dabbed her eyes with a tissue at one point, playing the role of the heartbroken daughter. When it was my turn, I stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table for strength. My voice shook at first, but then it grew steadier, louder, filling the courtroom. "I am 70 years old," I began. "I may not move as fast as I once did. I may not remember every date or every number, but I remember enough. I remember the nights I stayed awake sewing dresses so my children could have something new to wear at Christmas. I remember the mornings I walked to work in the snow so we could pay the mortgage. I remember every sacrifice, every tear, every prayer I whispered for the children I loved more than life itself. And I remember this: betrayal, the kind that cuts deeper than any knife, because it comes from the very people you gave everything to." I laid the documents on the table, one by one, my hands firm. The forged will, the confession letter, the bank records. This is not the work of a confused old woman. This is proof. Proof that my children, Anna and Daniel, have lied, stolen, and betrayed. Not only me, but their own sister. They wanted to silence me. But I will not be silenced. Gasps filled the courtroom as the judge examined the papers. Anna and Daniel shifted uncomfortably, their lawyer's face paling. Emily stepped forward then, her voice breaking with emotion as she recounted the threats they had made, the way they had forced her into silence. Tears streamed down her face, but her words were clear, sharp as glass. "They told me if I ever told Mom, they would destroy me. But the truth deserves to be heard." When she finished, the room was silent except for the scratching of the judge's pen. Finally, he looked up, his expression grave. "I find no evidence of incapacity, quite the opposite. Mrs. Thompson, your clarity and courage speak volumes. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, the allegations of fraud and forgery will be referred for criminal investigation." I exhaled, the breath I had been holding for months finally leaving my body. Anna's face crumpled, her mask shattering at last. Daniel cursed under his breath, slamming his fist against the table, but it was too late. The tide had turned. In the weeks that followed, everything unraveled for them. Investigations were launched. Bank accounts were frozen. Friends who once admired them turned away. Their reputations, so carefully polished, began to rot. And through it all, I stood firm, Emily by my side. But the story didn't end with their downfall. One crisp morning, months later, I received a letter. Not from Anna, not from Daniel, but from Michael, the son my husband had fathered in secret. His words were gentle, humble. He told me he had never wanted money. He only wanted to know the truth about where he came from. He had followed the trial in the news, seen the headlines, and decided to reach out. My hands trembled as I read his words. For days I wrestled with what to do. Part of me still burned with anger at my husband's betrayal. But another part of me, the part that had sung lullabies and held small hands through the night, knew what had to be done. I wrote back, slowly, carefully, with honesty. I told him I didn't know if I could ever forgive my husband, but that none of it was his fault. I told him about the man who had worked his hands raw to provide, about the good memories as well as the bad, and I told him, most of all, that he deserved to be seen, to be acknowledged. Weeks later, he came to visit. When I saw him walk through the doors of the nursing home, tall and nervous, with the same dark eyes my husband once had, I felt something inside me shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a beginning. We sat in the garden talking for hours, piecing together fragments of a past that had been buried for too long. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was healing. As for Anna and Daniel, they faded from my life. I heard bits and pieces, court cases, debts, angry whispers, but I didn't seek them out. My heart was too tired for more battles. Sometimes, late at night, I still think of the children they once were. The little girl who braided her doll's hair beside me, the boy who ran into my arms with scraped knees. I wonder where those children went, and if they ever think of me.
But I no longer live in the shadow of their choices.
I live in the light of my own truth. I sit now on the same bench in front of the nursing home where this story began, phone in hand. The roses sway gently in the breeze, and Emily is by my side, holding my hand. Michael visits sometimes too, bringing stories of his life, his children, his hopes. And though the silence on the other end of the line once broke me, it no longer defines me. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this: love is not blind. Love sees everything: the good, the bad, the betrayals, the lies. And even when it is broken, love can still find ways to heal. To anyone listening, anyone who has given everything only to be betrayed, you are not powerless. You are not invisible. Your voice still matters. And sometimes the greatest revenge is not destroying those who wronged you, but refusing to let them destroy you. So if this story has touched you, if it has reminded you of your own battles, your own strength, please share it. Like this video, leave a comment with your story, and subscribe so you can walk with me through the next chapter of life. We are not alone. None of us are.